I'll say hello to everybody again. And just to give you my background, I'm in Montreal, not traveling. Usually I am traveling all over the world, but with our dear friend COVID, we are all grounded. So happy to be home in Montreal. And usually I am traveling as an education consultant, and I've been traveling to many places. I've been to Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, and so many other places. And at the current time, I'm consulting in India. And it's basically in the base of the Himalaya mountains, which is really beautiful. And my connection with Montreal, with McGill, is that first of all, alumni, and got my degree, my teacher's diploma here, and then I went off, worked 25 years, came back, and then again went to university in England, in Oxford, got my PhD there. And when I returned, I came back to Montreal, to McGill. And here I was in the education department, where I worked with the research department and have been connected with it ever since. During I think about 6, 7 years ago, when I noticed MORSL on my way back home one day from the university, and I felt drawn towards it, and just walked in and became part of it, and I've been there since, and I've enjoyed it so much, and I'm so thankful for that.
And yes, and I've been the director here at MORSL for 2.5 years, and it's been wonderful to have you with us. Jess is our volunteer with the Sikh community, but like I said, she's an all-around amazing person and an artist. And actually, the book that I was talking about earlier, so this book that I was mentioning called Mantra Art, The Journey Within, is something that I was so happy to be gifted a few months ago, and I've been reading it. You can see by all of the little things. I've been reading it, and every time something just speaks to me, I was like, oh, I'm going to put a post-it on that. I want to remember that. It has been such a joy to read this book, and I know this is like a lifelong journey. So I think one of the things that is interesting, especially with students and undergrads or even graduate students, is to see that our spirituality and our searching is not something that you do just once as a young person, like you come up with it and it's like, oh, that's the answer and I'm good for the rest of my life. What I love about this book, The Journey Within, is that it's a journey and it keeps going. Like it's a step after step after step, and it's never completed. Which is, I think, a really beautiful lesson, because a lot of the things that you talk about just in this book are things that happened, you know, well after young adult life, like well
Oh, yeah.
after married life, and after having kids and having the kids grown and so forth. And I think for me, that was something that was super powerful to see that this art and this creativity just kept developing and evolving and changing and helping you grow. And it wasn't like a destination, but really a journey. And there's this wonderful quote that from your book right at the beginning when you're introducing it, and you say that for yourself that creating art is a form of meditation and spiritual dialogue. And I was wondering if you could like talk a little bit about that. How do you see this art, this creating art as meditative or some kind of a dialogue with your spiritual self?
I think one of the things that I discovered after I had started on making things was that it was a venue for you to be talking to yourself, your soul, let's say. Well, I didn't know what was going to manifest itself as I started drawing. I had an idea in my head, and I would think about it, and it would actually just sit in my head for a long, long time. And then finally, when I would start putting it on paper, I was always amazed at what came out, because afterwards I looked at it and I said, "Who did that?" you know, you know. So that's the dialogue I'm talking about over here. That it's a spiritual dialogue that is happening without you even knowing about it. And then when you see the end result or the process, then you realize what that conversation was all about, and the only thing that comes to your heart at that point is gratitude.
Mm,
Absolutely, thinking, oh my gosh, there is something else going on that I'm not aware of.
yeah,
That's the awe that I feel when I work with that. And that's not only with art, with anything else. I believe it's whether it's in your studies or in your daily life, your relationships with other people. It's when you let go and you allow your inner creativity to just pour through. Because I feel that sometimes what often happens is that we block it. We basically say, oh, I can't do that, or who am I to do it, or everybody else is doing this and how can I do this kind of conversation that begins to happen in the head. But then I feel that when I learned to stop that conversation that was kind of saying to me, you cannot do this, or it's useless, or, I'm just trying to put it in the context of what's happening around us, is that's when that conversation actually started. Otherwise it was just me in my head
yeah,
talking to myself, never inside, never went within inside to feel that there is something else that can be actually having a conversation with me. It's not something that you're aiming to have everyone else look at. It's just your own conversation going on, and that's enough. That's more than enough. Because when I was doing most of this work, I had no idea that this was going to be in a book format later on to be shared with other people. This was just for me, and I was just enjoying it, just enjoying the journey.
yeah. I myself feel that way with some of the music. Like I have a guitar, a little keyboard, and I like to play for myself, but I know that I'm not a performer, And I think, over the years, I've also struggled with part of that performance, trying to take away that kind of negative talk about, oh, it's not good enough to be shared, and to let go of that and just say, no, this is a moment. This is a meditation, right? This is a communing with this sense of art and this creating something and taking me to a different mind space rather than trying to think of, oh, I've got to practice this piece so it sounds good for someone else. I think creativity is often put like on a pedestal, right? Like it has to be like what is art, like it has to be worthy of admiration or some sort of acceptance to a standard of beauty. And I really like that you frame it as this way of meditating and this spiritual dialogue and really talking about some of the emotions that are happening while you're creating, like in the process and not so much at the end result. And since we are in this kind of intellectual community where we are like really focusing on our critical thinking and our analysis, how did you put that aside and engage different parts of yourself?
Well, I really struggled, to be honest with you. In the years that I was at Oxford, I had come back, after a long time not being in, the this intellectual field. Let's put it. Even though I was a teacher, I didn't write, I didn't read that much or anything. I was just going through a stage of my life where it was just basically homework, kids, homework, kids, And but then when I got there, you wouldn't believe it. It had been 25 years since I had written a paper. And, just to put words together. And the very first assignment that I was given was only 500 words. And it took me the entire weekend to write it. That's where I was starting from. That I just want to give you the context. And then slowly being in a place where intellect is everything, and all of a sudden I was in my head completely, you know, and being in the company of other people who were so very many, they were so smart and asking these questions. I also began to emulate those qualities slowly but surely. And I then began to question everything. those critical thinking skills were very important. I saw, because I didn't want to take anything for granted. I wanted to make sure that I was going to be, asking questions for everything. So the at the point where I came was that I began to question my faith also, religion, and I was critically asking, but who said that? How could this be? When? It's impossible. These were the kind of things that I was, beginning to bring in my head. And I was feeling quite distraught because I thought, because it was my faith and my, belief in a power, other than myself, that was keeping me grounded all this time. But now I was questioning it too. And so it began to feel very stressful for me, and it was only then that, fortunately, I was talking to one of my friends because about this, just mentioning that this was happening. And oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for that person in my life at that time, because he said to me, he said, "Just what you're doing is you're trying to put in a nail. Instead of using a hammer, you're taking a saw and you're trying to put that in there. You're using the wrong tools for the wrong thing. It's good to have those critical thinking skills, but think of them as tools to be used in the right situation. Don't use that tool in a place where it doesn't belong. In when you're talking about faith, and your belief, they're based on something that you cannot start questioning all the time. Faith is all about not having to ask questions, but being inside you all the time and realizing it intuitively, that all is there and you'll get everything, all the answers will come from there. And so slowly I let go. I let go. I said, okay, this. So what I did was I put this kind of a regime in place, and from 9 to 5, I had my hat with all the critical thinking skills where I had to work, you know. And when I came home, literally, I would take a shower and change my clothes completely, because I wanted to change that aura around me of that energy that I was bringing along with me. And then I would settle down and read something and begin to do some art or something. And all of a sudden, I realized that, they were related, but yet they were not. Okay. And so that I got, to be able to do, I was able to do those critical thinking skills actually after I replenished everything within myself with that critical time of being alone with myself and nurturing what was inside. So, yes, critical thinking skills, very important, but to be used only where necessary. That was my lesson.
Oh, that is such a hard message here at McGill in our,
Yes.
academic institution, right? Where things like intuition are not that highly valued, right? It's all
Mhm.
fact-based and evidence-based and this, that, and the other.
I think it's like going to the gym, right? The physical exercise,
Yeah.
where you make time for it and you say, okay, from 5 to 6, I'm gonna go there and do this, or for nowadays maybe at home. But being in that frame of mind where you are trying to trying to disconnect and be in that spiritual realm, I think is that gem that you need for your mind, and it begins to get used to it too, because it really, really um, gives you that opportunity to go within, and that's important. For me, at least, yes.
If you'll let me dive a little bit into your book, you incorporate a lot of Sikh um, meditations and, of course, the Punjabi script, and this is one example. But this is one of your images where you talk about falling leaves, and the title of this little essay that accompanies this is "Who is I?" Right? Who is the self? And how did you use these meditative drawings that a lot, and many of them are nature bound, right? Falling leaves in the fall, the shedding of an identity, or the new leaf in the spring, the growth and the renewal. So, how did you use these drawings to get to know yourself better?
I was very fortunate in that I had to walk through a park every day to go to my department from where I was, and I would be noticing. I wanted to be present in the moment. So one of the ways that I wanted to, because I didn't want to be thinking about what I'm going to be doing the entire day, or what was going to happen or what happened before. I wanted to always try to be in the present and just enjoy what was there. And one of the ways of doing that is when you're in the nature, you just look and you watch and you observe, how these the leaves are changing, falling. And I had this beautiful, there was a tree that had, as I would walk past it, it had come out of, like it had fallen down and the roots were half out. And it was almost when you saw it, you thought, it's fallen. It's going to, really rot, very soon. But surprisingly, this tree had one or two or, a few roots in there, which was keeping it alive. And every time I would go by it, I would say to myself, I said, if you can do it, I can do it. It was just a lesson that I was trying to learn every time I went through any leaves that were changing, or, especially um, fall. Fall is such a beautiful time, and especially when the leaf is falling and descending towards you onto the ground, it seems to be, dancing and feeling happy that it's gone through its change, and whatever is happening, it's fine. And I think I learned to accept change at that time. The fact that change is inevitable. No matter what you do, nothing is going to stay the same. And it became clear every day, every time when I saw those. And then when the buds started coming out, and there you are, coming out again. And I try to catch each one of them, say how big is it going to get in the next day. So the observations were the ones that were, I tried to relate them to myself each time. And that painting that you showed, in the center of it, there is a lettering which is actually called Ek. There's a one, and then there is a three kind of a thing with a roof on top of it. That's how I explain it. It is Ek Onkar, and this comes from the Sikh scriptures, and what it means is basically it says it's Ek Onkar, which means or tells us that there is omnipresence, that we, all of us, no matter who, what, where, like we are all one. And this is not only in the people, but in nature itself. And so this principle of Ek Onkar is what I incorporate in all of my paintings by handwriting in them this word, which is Vaheguru, which is it is pointing to the fact that the infinite is within you. And so that everything around us, we've got to start feeling and understanding that that is consciousness itself. And it's something that, we forget very quickly. Very quickly we forget, even when we are in the company of people, perhaps when we don't like them, or, something or the other, we quickly forget that, we've got to remember that principle of life. And it is something that has taken a long time, because just by doing it, it doesn't happen. Is by putting it in practice and realizing it again and again and again, falling 1,000 times, but yet waking up and understanding, oh, no, remember this lesson that we have to learn and be and live with it. And so the journey continues. It's never, but one day, I have complete faith that one day it will be what, all our all the sources of consciousness, pure consciousness, like Jesus and Guru Nanak and Muhammad, and name anyone at all, they all were conscious of that presence, not only around them, but within themselves. And that's why they were the actual, form of it. And the amazing thing that I have, I feel more and more often now is that is the goal for all of us, is to realize that we are that God consciousness and to become it.
Yeah.
And each religion is just one path taking us towards it, and if we come to that realization, then that path has been successful for us.
Mm. Yes, and so much of that, like you said, is um, looking at nature and ourselves. But beyond nature, a lot of your artwork is surrounded with nature, and I'm looking at the beautiful tree behind you as well,
Oh yeah.
on your wall.
Yes.
um, yeah, because people, I think, really feel connected when we're looking at nature. I think it's just something that's natural. It comes out of us, and it's not always easy to express in words, but there's that feeling that we're all made of the same molecules. We're all, the product of the same, matter that exists in the universe, and this consciousness that we can share. And I think that's a really powerful, not just a symbol, but a manifestation as well. What was interesting for me about your art piece, Jess, is that very few people look at fall with as much of a sense of beauty and joy as you do. It's often depicted in literature, at least in Western cultures, as a dying, right? As there's almost a sadness, there's a darkening of the daylight hours, and it's often a turning point in stories or in personal lives or narratives where things become dark and withered and end, right? But you were really presented it with this joy, this dance, and that this is a moment, and it's a moment just as full of life as any other one. I really enjoyed the way that you saw it.
It's a moment of renewal that is a promised renewal that it's in the air. And what really really overjoys me when I think about that is the fact that it's like, in the tree, when all leaves have fallen off, you think of it as dead, basically, unless we know it's going to come back in a year or whatever, during that time. But you could think of it that there's nothing going on at that moment. But yet, there is so much going on, where, the renewal aspect of everything inside is, making way for the next, sprouting. And it's during that time when one might think, oh, there's nothing, there is just no hope, for example, but when you really think about it, it's that at that time when you have to stop and say, I may not see it, but something is happening. Hope is round the corner. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I know it's going to be there. And that's what really catches me every time is that we forget, at least I do sometimes when I think about if something is not going well, I have to remind myself again and say, wait, be still. Something is happening, but you don't know yet. And sure enough,
Yeah.
the time comes and something is happening, and you say, oh, wow, why was I so worried about it? Or why did I go to do this and that? And I think we can apply this actually to COVID also in one way. Things are really looking, miserable to a lot of people at this time. And there are certain times when we are completely going, when is this going to change, because it has taken such a long time. And things still don't look very good at this moment, even if the vaccine comes out, what then, all of that. And of course, the absolute change that has occurred uh, in our lives, it is difficult to understand sometimes. But it's during this time that I keep going back to those moments and reminding myself, no, just be still. Make the best of what you have right now and stay in the moment. Don't think how it was like before and what it's going to become like later on. That's not. It's now. What can I find pleasure in right now? If today my best friends right now are my books. I keep going back to them. I go visit them. I don't even have to wear a mask when I visit them. I go find my books, and I'm a book collector, and it's amazing what each book, or not, I don't read the entire thing again, but just a little bit here and there brings back that reminder. Stop. Things will be fine. They have been all of these years. So what are you worried about? In fact, I want to share with you just quickly, if you don't mind.
Of
I'm
course.
reading this book called The Body,
Hmm.
and it's by Bill Bryson. And I don't know if you're familiar with Bill Bryson, but he writes in detail, and he writes about everything. What I'm finding, it's a huge book and it's got lots of details in it, and it's taking it's time to read, but I'm enjoying it one chapter at a time. And it says The Body, a guide for occupants. you know and what it is talking about is basically our body systems one at a time. Let's say, for example, uh, just our blood, for example, what's going on in there, what it's made up of, and how it has to go from one place to the other, how many nerves there are, how many this and that, whatever's in it. Like, for it to work 24 hours a day for the rest of your life in that particular manner, how? Who is telling you to do what has got to be done?
Yeah.
And we don't even give a second thought to that. The minute we get up, all our brains functioning, our arms and everything's going in the right spot, touch wood. And yes, there are times when it's not happening for some people, but majority of the time, it's working. And when you take a look at that, and how we don't even think about it, and yet it's happening, that's what brings me that hope again, feeling that I'm not the one who's in control here. I can't control my blinks. I cannot control my breaths. When I'm sleeping, I'm breathing. How? And when I get up in the morning, whoa, there's another day. So just those things. And so this book, in a very curious manner, has given me hope, and it has also nourished my scientific curiosities. So it's not for everyone, the book, but it's something that I am enjoying.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of traditional wisdom that in recent years has been validated by scientific discovery or research, and just thinking a little bit back on your tree resting for the winter. It's like, well, science now knows that sleeping is, getting the right sleep for our students. Like, should I cram an extra 2 hours and stay up late for my exam, or should I get 2 more hours of sleep? And science is showing 2 more hours of sleep is actually the right
But
answer. That's, like you said, something's happening, something's going on, a restorative process is going on. So yeah, I wanted to get a little bit into that theme of hope, since that is the theme of our week this week. And you've got this amazing image in your book of hope, and I just love the colors that you chose for it. This one is what I'm looking at. Um,
yes,
and it really does look like a sunset. And you actually quote Camus, the definition of hope as being the invincible summer within. And I
yeah.
just love this beautiful orangey, warm tones and that just gorgeous, gorgeous, imagery. And then you also look at not just the light that we often associate with hope, but also water and how water has taught you. So I wonder if
Mhm.
you could just tell us a little bit about these amazing images and how your hope your feelings of creating these, and how you looked at hope as a remedy for existential crisis.
It is something that allows us to enjoy and be who we really are, That's what I feel hope is. And I went through times when I was studying where sometimes I didn't allow myself to be hopeful and thought of things more in a pessimistic way, that things will not work out this way, and it's never going to do this, it's never going to happen, etc. But again, from water, from nature itself, the lessons came. Because, as if you take the time and you sit down and you watch the water flowing, and I do that again now. I'm very fortunate. I'm like about 5 minutes away from the St. Lawrence River right here. And I often get my walks in as often as I can, you know, um, go and sit at the banks and just watch the water. And it's just flowing, the flowing of that, the flow of the water. And is what gives me hope, in the sense that even when it comes to a block, even when there's a lot of water, there will be a big rock sitting there, and you watch that rock and it goes around it. It goes around there. It doesn't want to get stuck there. Sometimes, however, there are little whirlpools really standing, and you watch those, and they are, continuously the water is sitting in there and not going anywhere. But yet again, the wind gust or something will come and it will move it along. And so that's why, the flow of the water, and not even that, if it's not flowing, the stillness of it, just being there and staying, and everything gets together, the wind and everything. And so water is a huge teacher. It just goes around every obstacle, whatever comes, with the fact that it's going to go towards its source. It's going, and something's pushing it, whether it's the wind or whatever. That's again the source itself. And so it's just that uh, the observation, which brings you to a certain solitude, it gives you the silence that you require to go within and understand again that thing that I was telling you about, that there is another source that's going to be doing all of this thing. You just be still, just sit, and things will move. They will move, although they may not seem to you like they are moving. They are. And that's the stillness that I think that hope was able to bring to me as I drew it. And I wanted to know that even though the sun never goes away. The clouds come and then they drift away. It's always there. We just have to wait for it. It comes. It will be there another day. And so the thousand splendid suns, as I like to call it, there's no stopping them. You cannot stop them if you wanted to, so that's where that hope came. And again, one more time, as I wrote that word, significance of it being omnipresence, it is the divine hand behind everything that I am utterly, sure. I think I can. That's how I can put it. That I am assured. Let's put it that way. That I'm assured that there is a divine hand behind everything, and it is happening in the will. Now, which again, it doesn't mean that I don't have to do anything
Absolutely.
with my physical things. It's about being still inside, not about the actual effort that you're doing. Because once you become still, the effort will come, flow outside. And that's where art and creativity also comes back in again. But it's the stillness within that begins to bring out the creativity. And for creativity, for me, again, is what there is. There's nothing else tomorrow. There never was anything yesterday. It's now.
I love it. You coming back. I love that image of the water. with the obstacles. But the way you describe it, it's not just a giving up, and it's like, well, that's just happening. But there's this gust of wind, this other force that comes and pushes us along. And I think many of us can look to other people in our lives who lift us up, when we least expect it. And these are just things that, like I said, are gifts. Where they're unexpected things for us to be grateful for. Many people are looking for that sense of stillness, and in some areas, a secular mindfulness is a good entry point. It's a good place to start. But some people want to go beyond that and get in touch with this sense of infinite and oneness that Jess was talking about, which I think can happen through mindfulness, um, but you have to really cultivate it. You have to really work at it, I find. I don't know. What's your thought on that, Jess, on mindfulness? Do you have any opinions?
Absolutely. I mean, as long, sometimes we make these things into exercises rather than actually making them an entry or a portal into the consciousness that we want to become. And so if our desire is there and our wish is there, then we are given that opportunity to increase, the time that we spend in that mode of thought. Like Olivia, you were saying that, sometimes, we get bogged down because we have so much other work, and so we don't have time to spend on our creativity. And what I have learned is that we have to give time to our creativity first, because as a result, your work that you are going to be doing is going to be twice as more potent afterwards. It's like you got to nourish your spirit, which will then produce the work that you're wishing. And what happens is that we do it the other way around. We use our intellect and our critical things, and we tire ourselves out. And then we say, oh, once I've done this, then I will do my, I'll say a prayer here and there, But it's the other way around. It's the foundation that is the most important, where you're building your home, your house with everything. You got to get in there and build that foundation, whether it's in, some meditation or yoga, or just even your creativity, writing. That's an awesome way of getting there. Just sit and build that. And once that's, and it's not something that's going to go out of the way and then the next thing comes along. That's your foundation, and the rest of the things that will happen will be equally creative. That's what I have found, that is that it's beginning with it rather than just ending with it too.